What's up, everybody? It's your boy Ryan, and this is the Thunder Channel on nootropics, on testosterone, on biohacking, and on male performance. Happy Sunday. Didn't do a stream yesterday, was just busy yesterday morning, but now we're doing a Sunday stream. I guess to start it off, I have a couple while we get some people in here. I have some kind of housekeeping, sort of maintenance things to talk about. Hydra 21, okay? Actually, I have a window capture of this. Let me find it here. Where was it? I think that's it right there. Yeah, check this out. So this is a paper on Hydra 21. This is a nootropic chemical. Hold on a second here. Move that over. That is pretty new on the scene. I mean, I don't remember it being on the scene like 3 years ago or something. It's like I just started hearing about it within the last 3 years and then started dosing it. The stuff is really powerful. Initially, it looked like it was a cholinergic agonist or doing something with acetylcholine, but turns out that the predominant LTP fostering elements of it, which are memory encoding optimization elements, have to do with the AMPA receptor modulation. So the first line of this paper basically tells us what it does. Hydra 21 is a positive allosteric modulator at the glutamate AMPA receptor. So what this ends up doing is fostering more LTP. So then you have more memory synthesis, probably better memory encoding. Allosterically modifying a receptor site means you're actually modifying the site in a way where its inherent ligand can bind to it in a way which doesn't desensitize the receptor at all or lead to internalization, which you'd have to take something very consistently to do. However, it's like you could have temporary kind of internalization or downregulation of a receptor site depending on how hardcore you're agonizing it. But an allosteric modulator of that receptor makes it impossible to desensitize, which is really kind of cool. So it keeps the throughput of the ligand or the neurotransmitter binding to that receptor consistently. So Hydra 21 has been really interesting. You know, when I first took it, I want to say it was 2 years ago or something, it had like a PRL 853 effect, something comparable, which is instant memory. You know, like when it onsets, you're just like, wow, now I know. And it's like, you really do and can tell the difference between your baseline memory and then your memory on chemicals like Hydra 21 and PRL 853. Like the classic example is phone numbers. Like, you know, it's pretty difficult, especially when you pass 35, to remember phone numbers in their entirety. But with Hydra 21, you can remember like long pieces of information. It's like all of the aspects of holding stuff in your memory are substantially improved when taking this stuff. So yeah, I've been taking it somewhat recently, and I just wanted to share that with you folks. It doesn't get talked about on this channel all that much, because it's kind of like research chemical, you know, somewhat new on the scene. But, you know, for those of you that are looking for acute memory enhancements, which is very useful for particular types of work, especially like programming work, studying, give Hydra 21 a go. You know, it's a pretty safe chemical and has some really epic properties. The second thing I wanted to quick talk about is, yeah, I am done with my run of testosterone cream, and I am not going to continue using it. Testosterone cream was pretty epic. I was applying a click in the morning, a click at about 5 p.m. of was it a 400 milligrams per gram? It was actually a high milligram per gram dose of testosterone cream. It was, you know, rapid onset. I mean, you're peaking really quickly. And then, you know, you're dropping down still within physiologic ranges if you're dosing twice a day. And then the second dose, you're peaking again, right? So that was really good, but it made estradiol harder to control, like still manageable, but harder to control. So it's a bit of a pain in the ass. But then it's like the administration of testosterone cream scrotally is an absolute pain in the ass. You know, to optimize it, you have to use a microneedler or a derma roller, which is like you're rolling like small little needles on the application site. And, you know, you got to apply it twice a day. And then it's like you can't have sex within a couple hours of doing it, or at least you shouldn't. And so, or shower, or go swimming. You know what I mean? So it makes it, you know, very inconvenient compared to injections. Now, the benefits, however, were higher DHT, and I actually don't have the labs in front of me, but my DHT was sitting around 155 or something, above the reference range. I had higher than normal DHT. I didn't notice any hair shedding, which is good because I don't have that gene. I haven't noticed hair shedding on TRT, so it's not a problem with DHT or DHT analogs or whatever. But so it was like all positives except for having to apply it twice a day. We're talking about testosterone cream right now, and that's just not something that I don't know. I'm not going to continue doing it. So I'm going to run cypionate again at 182 milligrams. That was my anabolic dose before going on cream. I really like that dose. With the 0.125 milligram anastrozole tablets, it's actually super easy to dial in the AI with the cypionate dose. I may go to every other day injections. That's probably what I'm going to start doing. I'm essentially finished the cream, now, and tomorrow I'm going to, restart testosterone cypionate. So it's going to be interesting for me. That would be 52 milligrams every other day, which I've run before and works very well. Let me see if there is the last thing that I wanted to focus on. Oh yeah, cardio. So, I haven't posted any videos, but I've been making videos of like me doing cardio, which is just walking. It's like 3 miles in Southside Pittsburgh or North Shore Pittsburgh or downtown Pittsburgh a day, weather permitting. And honestly, like I've done cardio my whole adult life, but most of it was running for being in the Army and then running post being in the Army. Just the Army got me used to running, right? But it's bad on your knees. And then I want to consume 1,000 calories after like a big run. So walking has really been, it breaks up my day. It, gives you all the cardiovascular benefits, the microcirculation, the better oxygenation of your blood, the brain-derived neurotrophic factor, all these really good biomarkers improving from walking just a couple miles a day. And honestly, now it's just, in addition to the gym sessions in the morning, it's a regular part of my routine. And I wouldn't trade it for anything. So that's all I really got relative to me. Quick update on the Cortex stack. It's looking at the end of this month. Again, if not very early August, it's a new formula, guys. It's very potently stimulatory, but it's also a focus and flow stack. So there's some chemicals in it that will induce, in addition to the stimulation, a balance. So it's a stimulant balancer stack in the new Cortex stack, and that's launching very soon. Please look forward to it. All right, so I got some questions here. Those of you that just jumped in, post your questions. I'll get to them. If you want to post them for free, you can. Keep in mind, if you super chat them, I will give them more attention and more time and break them down, more thoroughly. So question number 1 comes from Lorcan. What's up, Lorcan? Hope you're doing great. Thiamine has been a complete game changer. Been taking thiamine HCl and benfotiamine. It just works. Yeah, totally. The stuff helps you synthesize more acetylcholine. Well, helps you release more acetylcholine and synthesize more from precursor. And I forget exactly what the mechanism is, but it basically helps you make more dopamine on top of your baseline too. The B vitamins, which I talked about, I think on the second recent video, they're so important for, neurological function, as well as being cofactors for nootropics to be very effective. Like I think if you're running into inconsistency with certain nootropics, B vitamins are critical. But yeah, thiamine or benfotiamine or solbutymine or TTFD, these are all analogs that are somewhat similar, but just small deviations in the chemical structure of vitamin B1 are very effective for brain function. Highly, highly effective. Highly effective for like resolving long-standing fatigue syndromes that nothing else could touch. That you can find all that with Elliot from I forget the name of his channel, but that dude is like the TTFD, thiamine, benfotiamine like specialist guy. And it's actually one of his videos that turned me on to TTFD, and I've been taking it since. I take 100 milligrams every day, and I love this stuff. I absolutely love it. Nudie Nudes has gotten his TRT stuff, so I guess just started testosterone replacement therapy, was having somewhat of a delay as far as I can remember with the pharmacies, which has been an absolute pain in the ass. All the compounding pharmacies have taken a little longer than usual to ship product, but not terribly. You waited way too long. But starting TRT, so let's wish him luck. Brother, you are about to embark upon a journey that will maybe be lifelong, maybe not be lifelong. You can always cycle off in PCT with Clomid and get your gonadotropins functioning normally again. But, so long as your dose is correct and your estradiol management is in check and you're running the appropriate blood work, you will have an amazing time on TRT. I've been on TRT for a while now. It's just something that I had to do based on my age and a few other factors. And I wouldn't trade it for the world. I'd never go back to being natural, The benefits are just too profound, right? If your dose is right for you and, your estradiol management is right and you're looking at prolactin and you're, monitoring labs, et cetera, it is one of the most safest. It's actually these days, like, what was the guy's name? Abraham Morgenthaler? I think that's his name. Like old school TRT doctor. A lot of YouTube videos and heavy research. This guy's like a titan in the TRT field. It's like, highlighting that no, not only does it not, increase the risk of heart disease, but, the opposite can essentially battle, a weakened cardiovascular state, does not cause prostate cancer. In fact, used to treat prostate cancer in some instances. And prostate cancer is also very complex and has to do with ER, and it's either ERA or ERB, estrogen receptor binding in the prostate. But yes, let's all wish Snooty Newts good luck on his TRT journey. You may do some dialing in. You may start in the dose that you're starting may be perfect. Either way, good luck, and you're going to learn a lot. So the protocol is 80 milligrams every 4 days. Okay, I think that's fine. 160 milligrams a week is basically what you're running. I think that's good. On those 80 milligram injections in the first 1 to 4 days is when, your testosterone is going to peak kind of later on in the day, maybe day 2, but in 1 to 4 days is when your estradiol is going to start peaking too. So just make sure you got an AI in there. I wouldn't start without an AI. It's just, that's a mistake that I see people getting, not the full experience, the TRT experience, when they don't start with an AI, but you want to be real careful. I mean, if you can manage it, get the 0.125 milligram compounded anastrozole tablets, because then you know exactly what you're getting and you can low dose and find your dose that makes sense. Abu is asking, is it safe to take lithium orotate and taurine? I believe you should be fine doing that. Forget the mechanism of lithium orotate, but it's not comparable to actual lithium. It's just not, very strong, but it does modulate serotonin at some capacity, as far as I remember. Maybe even dopamine. But I think you'd be safe doing that. I'm getting a question about mechanism by which marijuana increases prolactin. Yes. So what I think happens is pot actually suppresses prolactin, but you're not always smoking pot, right? Like, even if you're a stoner and you smoke a lot, there's going to be periods where you're not smoking pot, right? And so then you're going to have a surge in kind of like a prolactin rebound. That's one of the mechanisms for it. The other mechanism for it is certain chemicals in marijuana are highly estrogenic. Okay, there's no debating that. The literature is actually really clear on that. Highly estrogenic. And so when you have essentially what acts as an estrogen agonist, like an ERB or ERA receptor agonist, that somewhat acts like an estrogen, then you have direct stimulation of the cells in your pituitary that make prolactin. They're called lactotropes. So those are the predominant mechanisms of I lost my chat. Of marijuana induced hyperprolactinemia, essentially. It's just not something that one of my favorite YouTubers, Vigorous Steve, recently said something to the effect of most of the very productive people that he knows, and especially productive entrepreneurs, are not smoking pot. And I've smoked pot in my day, sure I have, but it's just not something that I like doing. For the lack of productivity, the brain kind of discoordination, as well as the potential for hyperprolactinemia, And, prolactin getting out of range is just not something you want to fuss with, because it can do things that are beyond the acute phase, meaning if your prolactin is elevated for a long period of time, but then you get it back to normal, your 5-alpha reductase enzymes that convert your TAS to DHT may not return to normal for a while. So there's nothing good about that. I know pot can be fun, but you got to find an alternative. Okay, so Zaid is asking, would you ever use DHA and pregnenolone supplementation on TRT like Vigorous T recommends? Yeah, sure. If you feel like you've run the labs and you're not optimal on them, I think what Steve's whole contention is that you're pushing super physiologic levels of testosterone via being on TRT, and at some level you're going to suppress a little bit of your neurosteroid, synthesis and release. They're predominantly coming from the adrenal glands, right? So that doesn't shut down when you're on TRT, but to a degree, you're not going to be making as much of them. But Steve's contention is, hey, if you've got super physiologic levels of test, you should have high levels of the neurosteroids as well. Now, you can achieve this with dosing HCG with testosterone too, but that brings its own issues. It has a very potent immunogenic effect. So those of you that are sensitive to things that stimulate the immune system or modify immune function, which it does, it has something to do with T cells, and HCG may not be good for you. That's rare for that to happen, by the way. People with long COVID deal with HCG issues. In addition to that, yeah, HCG, I mean, it's actually very powerful for libido, erection quality, these kind of things, so long as estradiol is in check, right? Because HCG will make you make more estradiol via upregulating aromatase in the testicles, and that aromatase in the testicles is a little resistant to AIs. So, you have those two choices, DHA pregnenolone or HCG. I think both are, totally fine. That'll pump. What's going on? No nootropics today, just a little bit of coffee this morning. I'm lying. B vitamins, CoQ10, cordyceps mushroom. And that's actually a topic for a future video because I think there's some confusion on what cordyceps is doing. It actually looks like part of its mechanism of action is D2 receptor agonism, which is awesome. So I took a dose of cordyceps this morning, and I don't know if I really noticed it. I kind of feel normally motivated, right? Whereas like if I was on a very potent dopaminergic like bromontane or 9-MEBC, I would be like very, very highly motivated and like impulsive to do like certain things, like, that's like that high dopamine state. But I like cordyceps because it seems to make my workouts like, it seems to make me recover easier or something on top of TRT, which totally like, revolutionizes my workouts. So that's it. Is there anything else in the morning regimen? No, multivitamin, which, has like run-of-the-mill multivitamins, B complex, CoQ10, some fish oil. I don't know if you consider that a nootropic. And 3,000 IU vitamin D. And I did not, so today is my last day of testosterone cream. I'm going to start, running Cypionate again tomorrow. I'm kind of just done with the cream. It's very, inconvenient, frankly. And so I'm on a click of cream, and that stuff is very potent. I'm probably peaking right now or soon enough as I get up at 5:36 a.m. and run the cream. So that's where I'm at. Feeling good, man. Feeling strong, feeling energized, feeling good. Any other questions, guys? If you guys got questions, ask them. Send them in the chat, and I will answer them. I was discussing earlier this paper here, which is showing us that the AMPA receptor modulation is really the prime mechanism for IDRA21, this really powerful nootropic chemical that improves memory in a very noticeable way. For people that are like, if you study, if you're in college or something, or you need to study for something, IDRA21 would be a great compound. For programmers, IDRA21 would be a great compound. And for the, the experimenter that wants to see, like, if they can get positive results from a nootropic, then IDRA21 is pretty powerful. The last bit of this goes, these findings support the use of AMPA modulators like IDRA21 in the treatment of cognitive memory disorders, including those associated with aging. Yeah, so anything that improves brain function in people that are aging and have cognitive disorders tends to improve brain function in people that do not have those problems. IDRA21 is like exceptionally powerful. Really, really powerful stuff. All right, did I miss any questions here? I got a comment on TTFD. Yeah, the thing about the analogs of thiamine is that some people respond better to one versus the other. Like, I respond better to TTFD than benfotiamine. Like, the TTFD gives me, it does so many positive things. It clears my nasal passages, which I've always had an issue with, and it makes my brain function better. It's helping us synthesize and to release more acetylcholine. Same thing with dopamine. But the benfotiamine, like, I didn't really notice that. Neither of those effects, like none of those effects that I just mentioned with benfotiamine, which I find interesting, and what would be, somewhat of a similar or comparable dose. So who knows? TTFD is radical. I'm running 100 milligrams every day. I just love the stuff. I won't go back to not running it. Consultations are back up. Yeah, they've been up for a couple weeks, but again, if you need to book with me regarding any of your demands for performance or optimization of testosterone replacement therapy protocols, nootropic regimen formulation, all this stuff is back up, livecortex.com. Probably the most popular options are these targeted email advices. Like, if you don't want to spend, the calls are $249 for a 20-minute call, $690 or $599 for a 45-minute call. And then we have protocol formulations. We have 3-month programs, all this stuff. If your budget is not in those ranges, book an email consult, because you can send me your labs, your situation, your breakdown, hopefully with you being as detailed as possible so that I can help you. And I will respond with protocols and ways to resolve those issues. That's just, you can find all that on the consultations tab, livecortex.com. The consultations in this business has taken over the revenue for Cortex and Torque. So like, I'm in high demand right now, my friends. All right, take on Forskolin. Forskolin, I forget exactly what it's doing. It's modifying camp in some capacity, but it has all kinds of properties. Like, it will increase your anti-diuretic hormone that like pumps out from your, I think, posterior or anterior pituitary. And it, makes it so that when you're drinking large amounts of liquids, you don't pee like crazy. Having high levels of ADH or at least moderate levels of ADH, not low levels of ADH, are good, and Forskolin will help you do that. If it gets past a certain threshold, though, you then retain too much water, and you don't want that to happen. Otherwise, for brain performance, like, I think it was first popularized in a stack called Siltep, which was made by a company called, well, now they're called Natural Stacks. I think they've always been called Natural Stacks. Oh no, Siltep is now Neurofuel, and I think it still has Forskolin in it. And they popularized the combination of artichoke extract and Forskolin together as a nootropic combination, which actually is very powerful. Yeah, so that's my take on it. Stack it with artichoke extract, and you probably have like a powerful nootropic experience. Any other questions, guys? As I was saying in the beginning, yeah, like what's been relevant for me is, well, first of all, I've been dosing Hydra 21, which I really love. Stuff is powerful. AMPA receptor modulator, allosterically, which means it doesn't run the risk of desensitization of the receptor sites. I'm done with cream. I'm just done with testosterone cream. It's just inefficient, and I think it's just very inconvenient. Like, gotta take a shower, use the derma roller, apply it, and then no sex within a couple hours. It's like, all right. And then twice a day. What happens when you're out? Like, this has happened to me several times. It's 5 p.m. and I'm out with some chick or whatever. And I'm like, I'm not going to apply it like in the bathroom, at this restaurant. It just doesn't make sense. So yeah, I'm going back on my anabolic dose of testosterone cypionate, which is 182 milligrams. I'll start that tomorrow. I'm excited about that. I just know how it affects me. Easy to manage E2. I'm going to be running every other day injections of 60 milligrams or 52 milligrams each, which will peak E2, but with the 0.125 milligram anastrozole tablets, that's actually very easy to manage. And cardio, guys, do the cardio. You don't have to run, but get a walk in. Force yourself to do it. I wanted to mention this. When I don't feel like walking, sometimes nootropics help, and sometimes fucking David Goggins helps, bro. If you need motivation to do something, just turn on some David Goggins in your headset. Like, David Goggins, ex-Navy SEAL, big, tall, black dude, fucking killer of an individual. And highly, highly motivating individual. He'll say shit like, he'll just be like, yeah, bro, like, well, will you feel better after the workout or the run? Do you need to do it? That's it. Like, don't try to talk yourself out of stuff that you need to do. We got a question about modafinil. How often do I use modafinil? 5-6 times a month, I would say. Yeah, it turns out like once a week, sometimes twice a week. Yeah, it's on days where I need to catch up on something significant that I'm like behind on work-wise, administrative-wise with Cortex Labs, or I'm working on a product or something. And I just need, 8 hours, 12 hours. Like, I'm just going to do nothing else but work the whole day. That's when I dose modafinil. I think the stuff is very powerful. I've been dosing modafinil, in that capacity, 4 to 6 times a month. I want to say for like 6 years. Prior to that, I experimented with it at various capacities. So I've been in total taking modafinil, albeit sparingly, for like 10 years or something. It's one of the best nootropics ever. I'm getting a question about, okay, so you advise against using 9-MeBC sublingually. Yes, it seems to be absorbed much better this way. Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of things that you can increase the absorption for, but that aren't necessarily better. It's not studied sublingually, number one. And that's important, right? When looking at safety profiles of what is a research chemical anyway, so it doesn't have a whole lot of research behind it. At the same time, it's like, it's studied taking orally, so taking it sublingually messes with the pharmacokinetics. It messes with the pharmacodynamics, right? And so, like, you don't really understand ultimately what you're getting, and that translates very differently dose-wise. There's zero way to figure out what the adequate dose is going to be if you're dosing it sublingually. There's just zero way to do that. It also tastes very crappy sublingually, right? And you run the risk of it being caustic, so I'm not sure that it's a great idea. But the fact that, for me, from a responsible point of view as a biohacker, and this is how you want to approach everything, I don't know the dose translation. I can't quite, I can't quite nail that down to be exact. Whereas if I weigh out 50 milligrams on a scale, I know exactly what I'm getting, how it affects me, and I know how much I'm absorbing or getting. It's like I understand the dose translation that way. And so, yeah, I mean, you're better off not. It's like, just because some people on Reddit are saying that you should be dosing it sublingually because orally is like less bioavailable. It's like, well, first of all, have they proven that? Secondly, where's the paper that suggests that, or that definitively states that? Did you read that paper? Or did you take fucking Joe Mama 34 on Reddit's advice? Like, you want to be careful with shit like that. Dose it orally, my friend. Andrew Martin has a question about nicotine. Yeah, I think it's awesome, man. It's a cholinergic agonist. So right to the nicotinic acetylcholine receptors as an agonist. That's what it's going to do. It displaces your inherent acetylcholine at those receptors because it has a higher affinity for those receptors. But it's just, it's very, very potent, wakefulness promoting, memory promoting chemical. For a while, I just fell off or stopped doing it. I was taking nicotine patches. I should probably bring it back in, but I'm just experimenting with other stuff where I don't need it. But I was running 7 milligram nicotine patches most of the times with torque, because if you stack torque with nicotine patches and coffee or espresso, like, it's very, very strong for brain function. But 7 milligram nicotine patch in of itself, very, very powerful. Yeah, I think nicotine, especially if you have a patch, so you're kind of transdermally and somewhat consistently distributing small amounts, not bolus amounts of nicotine through the bloodstream, entering the brain and and binding to cholinergic receptors, you have what is sustenance in your brain performance. It's like very, very awesome. Doesn't come without side effects though. Like if you've never smoked before, you don't smoke cigars, or you're not used to nicotine, the first couple iterations of dosing nicotine, may overstimulate you, make you feel a little strange. When I dose it too high, like 14 or 21 milligram patches, which I've tried, I feel very unwell very quickly. Then I got to take the patch off, and then it resolves within 5 minutes or so. Donald Pump is doing cardio. Awesome, brother. Zach is saying, besides estradiol and total test, what other hormone do I need to look at for anhedonia and PSSD? Good question. You would want to look at serum prolactin. Yeah, I mean, if you took an SSRI, your prolactin was almost definitely over range. It may not be now, but prolactin over range for consistent periods of time, we don't even know the time frame, inhibits 5-alpha reductase, which means your testosterone wasn't converting to DHT, which means your androgen receptors at the tissue level, penile tissue, brain tissue, other tissue, were not properly being bound to by dihydrotestosterone, which means they were starved of androgenicity, which gives you sexual, negatives, which basically inhibits sexual functions. That's one mechanism by which SSRIs can do that, even if your prolactin is in range now. To upregulate 5-AR, you want to be dosing TRT plus HCG. HCG will upregulate 5-AR in the Leydig cells in your testicles, which is very necessary. At the same time, high doses of testosterone with HCG will also help upregulate the 5-ARs, but you got to go high, and not injecting every day. You should probably inject at least every other day, so you're getting somewhat of a bolus dose. Manage estradiol for sure, but prolactin would be the other lab. You want to look at DHT and see where that is. You want to look at estradiol, see where that is. Tests and estradiol are probably going to be low, right? That's almost guaranteed to be the case. That they're not going to be like 930 or something. It's going to be low. You want to test total test, free test, sex hormone binding globulin, estradiol, prolactin. And you can look at DHEA and pregnenolone, but those haven't been very heavy influencers on PSSD in my experience. Rodrigo, what's up, brother? Does caffeine interfere with dopamine recovery when on 9-MBC and bromotain? Interfere? No. I mean, I don't think significantly. It'll make you release a little more dopamine than usual, but I don't see that being a problem. No, I don't see that being an issue. Yeah, no. I mean, what you'd really be looking at that would be troublesome to do if you're trying to recover dopamine. I mean, that's a very nebulous thing, so I'm not even sure what you're referring to. But if you think there's a dopaminergic problem, the thing to avoid would be heavy dopamine D2 agonists, and you can only really get that in drug form. I mean, there are some like Chinese herbs that have D2 agonism elements to them, but you're really looking at, cabergoline and bromocriptine for that. So I don't think caffeine would be a particular issue. Prince, Nordic Naturals EPA. Yeah, that's not going to help anhedonia. And I've seen you like post that over and over again. I'm not sure if you're promoting that or what, but if you are, don't do that. But that won't fix anhedonia. No, anhedonia is very complicated. It's hormonally mediated, but the hormones ultimately mediate the neurotransmitters. And a loss of hypothalamic dopamine function and a internalization of dopamine receptors is, one of the mechanisms of anhedonia. So, EPA and DHA really won't do a whole lot. Morning, Odie. Andrew Martin, hair loss prevention regimen. Not really. The only thing, it's like you don't want to mess with inhibiting 5-alpha reductase, which is what all the anti-DHT drugs are going to do, like finasteride or dutasteride. Like even, what's that stuff? Saw palmetto is a 5-alpha reductase inhibitor. You just don't, you don't want to do that. If you have the MPB gene, the male pattern baldness gene, you're just gonna have to stick with it. Grow a beard, shave your head, and dress nice, get in great fucking shape, and then it doesn't. Chicks will dig bald guys if they're confident, otherwise good-looking men that are in shape and whatever. It's like, make a lot of money, do well for yourself, look good, dress well, all that shit, and you'll be good. But otherwise, yeah, I think there is it's like a baseball cap with red lights like woven into the top of it that you can put on, and the red lights are shining on your scalp. Photobiomodulation is effectively what that's called. And that has been studied for, and there's actual products for reduction in hair loss or fostering hair growth with stuff like that. It's basically red light therapy for your scalp, but you wear a hat that has all these infrared red lights on it. It's actually pretty interesting. So you may want to look into that. Zoomer Loyalist is saying, I have really bad insomnia and constant headaches that diet and exercise supplements haven't been able to help. History of drug abuse. What drugs? Insomnia and constant headaches. I would do an MRI the first thing I would do is an MRI of my brain if I were you. Yeah. You want to understand what might be causing that. And you want to rule out pituitary adenomas, craniophryngiomas. You want to rule out brain tumors, essentially, in that particular case, because that could easily cause. I don't know what medications you're on, but that sounds like, yeah. There could be medications that are causing it. Otherwise, it's really difficult to diagnose without more information. Your labs. I don't know what labs you would want to look at that would, efficiently or successfully diagnosed headaches. That's a difficult one. When did it start? And what proximity was what around? Was there a pharmaceutical drug? Was there something else? What were the drugs that you were taking? What other mechanisms of action and downstream negatives long term, and how can you fix that? Those are the questions that I would be asking. Odie is saying, trying to become bilingual. Any suggestions for nootropics to learn like Bradley Cooper? Well, I was just talking about Hydra 21, and that's probably one of your most powerful options for that. Now, where is that? This here. Okay. This chemical is a modulator of the AMPA receptors. You don't really need to know a whole lot about what they do, except for that they're going to foster better memory via improving long-term potentiation. So that chemical there, which is safe, you can dose it between 5 to 10 milligrams, would be a great option. Like dose 5 to 10 milligrams, 20, 30 minutes later, start your language learning. Like Rosetta Stone or whatever it is you're using. Like that would be very, very effective for that. This stuff is very powerful. Thoughts on finasteride? Yeah, I don't like the idea of any 5-alpha reductase inhibitor being in the picture at all, ever. I just don't like it, because I treat people, or I'm not a doctor, so I can't really say treat, but I do consultations with people and have to help pull them out of these situations where they have genital numbness, sexual muting, anorgasmia, anhedonia from taking drugs like finasteride. Some people get away with it and they're just fine, absolutely fine. It's a small percentage of people that have negatives, but I see those people's negatives, and sure, I love the business and, whatever. It's terrible. People are, really, really suffering. So if you can find another way to deal with the potential for hair loss or actual hair loss, then do it. Question from Conor McGregor profile. Have you noticed people experiencing hair loss due to high prolactin? No, definitely not. Nope, I have not. Prolactin interferes with the hair follicles at a very minor level, not significant. Bubbles, have you heard of nucleotides as supplements? Yeah, uridine monophosphate is a nucleotide as far as I remember. And that stuff's very powerful, right? It modifies RNA at some level. I forget exactly mechanistically what it's doing relative to that, but it's optimizing dopamine receptor sensitivity, but mainly inducing neurogenesis. Yeah. Nucleotides are powerful, and uridine monophosphate is one of them. Patrick, how do I have a rich mustache? Genes, definitely genes. Yeah, 100% genetics, dude. Like I always say that I got pretty blessed genetically with like good facial hair. I don't have the male pattern baldness gene. Otherwise I'd be bald. I'm on testosterone replacement. But I'm only 5'10" on a good day. You know what I mean? Like 5'9.5", 5'10". So I lucked out as far as having a thick mustache, but I'm not 6'2" like I'd like to be. I think phenylalanine. So this is a question about DLPA or phenylalanine. I think that's good stuff. Yeah, I mean, I haven't really noticed much of a different effect between the two, between tyrosine and phenylalanine. I think they're both going to end up doing the same thing and increasing dopamine, increasing the other catecholamines. They're just at different steps in the process. That's all. That's all that really is. You be fine just taking tyrosine and ultimately getting the same response. Prince is talking about EPA only. Yeah, I think you want to stack them both regardless. DHA and EPA. Did I miss any questions here, guys? I don't think I did. In the meantime, yes, if you need to book me for consultations, this has taken over our business. Like, it's completely taken over. And I like it because I get to see a wide range, a whole spectrum of not only problems, but like labs. And we get to, try tailored approaches to resolve issues that your PCP, your GP, even your specialist, MD is not going to be able to help you with. I mean, frankly, they don't have the time or the inclination to look into this stuff at that level. So, I get the call when people can't figure out what's happening with their brain chemistry, or from the hardcore, business person that needs to be functioning for 16 hours, sleep well, then function for 16 hours again. The next day needs to run that for the next 3 months every day. You know what I mean? To optimize those people. I'm getting the calls from serious business individuals, to make them function awesomely, but also regular Joes that need to function great, both on a testosterone replacement therapy level. Like if your protocol is skewed and you need help with that, please hire me. That's one of my biggest specialties. But in addition to that, nootropics, energy optimization, all that stuff that you see on the screen. All right, folks, any other questions that I am missing? Zach is asking, can TRT help with anxiety? Absolutely. And through a variety of neurotransmitter-based things. You're going to increase dopamine synthesis. If you're taking HCG with your testosterone, you're going to be making more of the neurosteroids, which ultimately in their downstream their downstream metabolites are going to be like binding to the GABA A receptors and stuff. And so, TRT should certainly help. It depends on what's causing your anxiety, but if you go to the TRT or the testosterone subreddit on Reddit and just like search like TRT and anxiety, testosterone and anxiety, you're going to find like a disproportionate amount, like almost a jaw-dropping amount of people that were like, I had an anxiety disorder that nothing could touch, and then I got on TRT and it cured it. So very substantially. Low testosterone itself should be clinically identified as a cause of anxiety. Yes. Andrew Martin is going, how would you go about dialing a Arimidex dose and frequency on TRT? The single best way to do that I have found at this point, both working with men on TRT for 6 years, as well as me being on TRT now for a while, is to get very low dose anastrozole compounded tablets. So what you would want to do is you would want to get you would want to get the 0.125 milligram. I'm going to find them for you here. Let's see. 0.125 milligram compounded anastrozole. Just so that you actually have an idea of what you're looking at here. This is what you want to get your hands on. You want to get, so this is Empower Pharmacy. Okay, this is a pharmacy that your doc can write you a script for, but for a specific compounding of, anastrozole in doses that are otherwise abnormal compared to what is usually prescribed. Usually it's a milligram tablet that's prescribed for anastrozole. But you can get these compounded in 0.2 milligrams, 0.35, 0.4 milligrams, 0.75 milligrams, 0.125 milligram, and 0.25 and 0.5. I get prescribed the 0.125 milligrams. I'm now with Defy. So they prescribe it. They have that and they can prescribe it through Empower. But prior to that, I sought out a private MD who I love. He's awesome. I'll still see him for certain things and pick his brain about stuff that, biohackers really don't have access to or wouldn't be privy to. It's great to have an MD around. We're not smarter than them. We just do different things. And I had him prescribe me 0.125 milligrams compounded anastrozole. So that's the best way to, use an AI on TRT, right? It's to start with one of them once a week. Run your labs on E2 sensitive before, run your labs 3 days post taking the anastrozole, because that's about when the half-life, is ending or starting basically. And, most of it's going to be out of your system. I mean, for some people, most of it's out of your system in 48 hours, frankly, people that metabolize it very quickly. What was I going to say? In addition to that though, there are guys that are on far too low dose. This is a very important point. Far too low doses of TRT. And then anastrozole just fucking royally makes them feel like shit because it tanks their estradiol, because their estradiol is only at 35 and they do need to lower it, right? Because guys are going to feel better between 20 and 30. Honestly, 25 is a great number to shoot for on TRT as far as estradiol goes. And then they take, 0.25 of a 1 milligram tablet, and then estradiol goes to 12. Now their joints are hurting and they feel crappy and they're not used to that drop, and so they have symptoms. Your dose, and it's because they're on too low of a dose, around 105 milligrams a week or something, Guys, these days more and more I'm coming to understand that 150 milligrams or more. It's like people think, okay, well, just lower the dose, less is more, because then you're going to get lower estradiol. That's true. But there's a point at which, depending on how much you aromatize, where even 100 milligrams a week or 90 milligrams a week, you're still going to aromatize a little too much. And that ratio is going to be skewed where you need to lower estradiol even further. And then you take an estradiol and it's going to crash it, right? Because you're just far too low anyway. Or you're low-ish, be on higher doses and be on, 0.125 to 0.50 to 0.875 to 1 milligrams a week of anastrozole. That's where you need to be. And if that's still, if even very low doses are actually crashing your estradiol, which is usually not the case, it's just you're sensitive to quick drops, people aren't actually looking at their blood work, then add HCG, because HCG will, create some aromatase expression in the testicles that are resistant to AIs, so that you won't crash them, but you'll still lower the estradiol to a point where you're in that 20 to 30 picograms per milliliter range where you actually feel good. That would be my suggestion. Get the compounded anastrozole tablets. Absolutely, positively clutch, my friend. All right. I have some other questions here. Nays is saying, what would you suggest for TRT? I have an amazing primary, but when my test was bottomed out at 43 nanograms per deciliter, that is terrible. Yeah, but even when my test was bottomed out at 43, not sure what you're asking here. I think you should go on TRT if your test is 43 nanograms per deciliter. That is hypogonadal severely, and your tissues are being starved of DHT and testosterone. Bone tissues, brain tissues, penile tissues, muscle tissues. You're unhealthy at that level of testosterone. I'd be on 150 to 200 milligrams a week, with 0.125 to 0.5 milligrams of anastrozole a week, split up maybe or whatever. if your doc won't prescribe, if you're below 38, try to get with a TRT clinic. Maybe they will help you. Otherwise, they can prescribe Clomid for that, which is fine, but you're going to have to manage estradiol, even though you're inhibiting some of the receptor binding. You still have estradiol. Otherwise, you may want to look into UGL. Oh, you're on TRT now, but not via doc. Works. Want to find a good clinic. Yeah. If you're over 38, any clinic will help you, especially if you're on TRT already. But if you're doing UGL, that might be a little difficult because they're going to see your labs and be like, why is your test 1,000? You know? So, Seneca is saying, started taking mecunopurines and DHEA to sensitize dopamine receptors. Well, neither will do that. So I could take less Adderall. Anecdotally, it seems to be working. Can you explain the mechanism? Yeah, the mechanism of action is mecunopurines is giving you more synaptically available dopamine. It's not doing anything to the receptor site. If anything, the Adderall was internalizing the receptors, which is somewhat desensitization of how they respond to a ligand, to an agonist that binds to them, like dopamine. And so now that you're taking Mucuna, you now have like synaptically available dopamine where, you don't have to take a drug, Adderall, which will force you to have more synaptically available dopamine. And now that, I don't know if Adderall is out of the picture or how much less you're taking, but now the Adderall is not binding to the DAT, the dopamine transporter, and preventing proper recycling. You actually need the transporters to recycle your dopamine to store for later use, right? And to manage the available amounts of dopamine, because otherwise you run the risk of, ultimately what is dopamine depletion, dopamine signaling problems, and all this kind of really murky shit when you take Adderall for a long period of time. So I'm glad you're getting a better response, and the mechanism of action is you have more synaptically available dopamine. Yeah, that's basically it. And Adderall was no doubt depleting dopamine levels. Yeah, it's putting it into circulation by preventing it from being recycled. But where's that come from? There's reservoirs where dopamine originates, like the VTA of your brain, and Adderall depletes that stuff. So having Mucuna in the mix, you now have more dopamine to work with. I would also take P5P if you're concerned about that. That'll help you synthesize more dopamine, which is very good. Anything else I can think of? B vitamins. Make sure you're getting B vitamins every day. And good luck. John Doe, didn't notice much with phenylpirastam. Took it out for 3 days. Can't help you because you're not telling me the dose, nor are you telling me the choline source, nor are you telling me the choline source dose. I mean, how do people expect, I'm going to rant for a second, how do you expect to get a response from this where you can't be as, granular enough to even give me the doses? Do you not think that the doses of each matter? Bro, figure out, post your doses and what choline source did you take it with? Do you understand what it's even doing? Where did you get it from? You got to look at these kind of things. Yeah, I tried Subroxy. It was okay. Mild, better brain function. But yeah, John, I can't help you, man. I mean, what is your dose? What's your choline source? What's the dose of that? What did you take around it? Everything plays a role into this. You can't just say Nupep didn't work for me or phenylpirastam didn't work for me. It's the most simplistic thinking. You probably shouldn't be taking nootropics if that's how simple you think. What else is going on? It's a safe cycle for Mucuna. I mean, Mucuna is a very safe chemical. So, I mean, if you want to run it for some time and then stop taking it, 500 to 1,000 milligrams a day for cycle off the weekends would be a good idea, because you can run the risk of extra noradrenaline synthesis from the mecunopurine, from the minor amount of levodopa that's naturally occurring in mecunopurines. So if you're sensitive to that, which I am, I take Mucuna all the time, but if I go past a certain dose, I start feeling overstimulated and agitated. And that's the neuradrenergic components to it. So yeah, 500 to 1,000 milligrams, 5 days a week, cycle off on the weekends for good measure. Monitor, your level of agitation and stimulation. If you start feeling that I'm agitated or I'm extra stimulated, then you're probably pumping up the other catecholamines besides dopamine too much. You got to take a break. But yeah, I've taken Mucuna on and off for more than a decade. I love it. I mean, it's in Torque, and Torque is one of the most purchased nootropic stacks on the web. It's driven largely by adenosine receptor antagonists, or blockers, but Mucuna in torque is also very strong. So good luck with Mucuna. That's what I would suggest. Zach, trying to find a lab to check my hormones on my own. I live in New York City. Watch your videos. So, but they don't post my city on labs. Well, maybe you're referring to discounted labs where they don't cover New York City. If you're not referring to that, go to discountedlabs.com and sign up for an account, and you can run your own labs yourself without a doctor. Yeah. If they don't do it in New York, I don't know how far you are from Jersey, but Jersey's probably included. I would drive to a New Jersey, Quest or LabCorp and make that work. Armodafinil versus modafinil, I honestly do notice a difference between the two of them. Like armodafinil's onset's quicker. It doesn't last as long for me, interestingly, and it requires lower doses. However, that's not very attractive to me, Like I don't care. Like I'd rather take, I know that 75 to 100 milligrams of modafinil is going to get me like the effect that I want. And so armodafinil being way more expensive, frankly, and a little more bioavailable, whatever, it's just not, it's not worth it. We don't talk about sources here. I've mentioned that probably literally 1,000 times. We can't talk about sources on the channel. And that's just because YouTube wants to axe us because they think that we're, doing something illegal. Selenium, yeah. Selenium does a lot of things, but yeah, God, off the top of my head, I forget exactly. In addition, so aside from helping you synthesize more thyroid hormones, which is predominantly what selenium would act as a nootropic, it's also a mild aromatase inhibitor. A lot of people don't know that. So if you have an issue with estrogen being too high, selenium will help you to lower serum concentrations of estradiol a little bit. But otherwise, it's really the thyroid enhancing stuff that is powerful. Okay, so with your phenylpiracetam, take a choline source. Don't rely on eggs. And, is it phenylpiracetam hydrazide or regular phenylpiracetam, and where did you get it? Allopregnanolone, yeah, you would have to make more progesterone, is it? Ultimately, take HCG, and you will make higher concentrations of allopregnanolone. Yeah, that's downstream from, other, I think it's progesterone. But ultimately, you could take pregnenolone and get more allopregnanolone. Good starting dose for TRT and HCG. For your particular situation, you probably want to go high. This is going to sound crazy, but you probably want to start at 175, 180 milligrams. Yeah. I mean, I'm working currently with guys that are on TRT that are on less, but we're seeing progress. So I don't want to touch the dose right now. But yeah, if I were to start you, and some of those are limited by, clinics that are prescribing and they're checking their blood work, so they're getting in the way of what we're trying to do. Like as far as I need them to be dosing 180 milligrams, but yeah, 180, 250 IU 3 times a week of HCG would be sufficient. If you want to go 4 times a week, that's fine. You want to push for at least 1,000 IU, call it 1,000 IU HCG a week. 180 milligrams test. You're going to need an aromatase inhibitor on that. So I'd be dosing, who knows, but it's anywhere from 0.25 to 1 milligram of anastrozole or Arimidex, same drug, just different brand names or names for it, a week, split up however you find makes sense for you. On my Cypionate protocol, I'm running 0.25 anastrozole every other day, so it ends up being, what is that? 0.875 a week, I think, something to that effect, almost 1 milligram a week. Anything less, and I'm getting estrogenic sides, and I don't like those. But yeah, 180 and then 1,000 IU HCG, and then make sure you're managing estradiol as well. Jammer with a super chat, thanks, brother. Jammer saying 170 milligrams TRT with 0.5 AZ every other day. Can I lose libido or have ED issues if estradiol is too low? Totally. Yeah, below 20 and I'm asexual. Well, I say below 15 picograms per milliliter of estradiol and I'm completely asexual and don't want anything to do with it. 18 to 25, I'm a fucking absolute beast. And yeah, 25 to 27, I know this sounds super weird. I've actually, dude, I got so hyper frequent with running labs to find out what is the exact estradiol number that I feel great at. And it's literally 27. 27 picograms per milliliter estradiol, and I am a libido monster. Erections are great. Everything else is great, and I feel good. But yeah, I mean, below a certain threshold of estradiol, you're going to have sexual dysfunction too. I think estradiol serves via receptor binding in the brain as a modulator of the sexual response for males in conjunction with high doses of testosterone or high levels of testosterone and adequate signaling and good SHBG and things of this nature. Like where it just can't be crashed. There are rare cases where you've got sexual effects and sexualization without high estradiol, like in cases of aromatase deficiency. There's clinical papers on that. But for most guys, they're going to need estradiol to not be crashed in order to have libido and erection quality. But not too high, because past a certain point and then it crashes it too. Golden rule, stay between 20 and 30 picograms per milliliter estradiol. You know, that's kind of where you want. I mean, you can experiment with being at 40 or 50 and see if that helps your libido as well. Who am I to say that it won't? But yeah, then you run the risk of gyno, you run the risk of prolactin secretion, you run the risk of heavy estrogen receptor binding at the prostate, which is going to enlarge the tissue. And it's going to cause prostate issues. And you also run the risk of venous leakage with high doses or high levels of estradiol. And that's all validated literature. I don't know why the pro-estrogen guys like aren't looking at that, but I mean, it's probably because they don't want to admit that their whole like estrogen is great, you know, thing is like completely fucking skewed and hardly scientific. So at 0.5 every other day, that's a lot for 170 milligrams. Like me at 182 milligrams, testosterone cypionate split up every other day. So it's 52 milligram injections. You know, I got to run 0.25 every other day. So basically half of what you're running. But that keeps me in that 20 to 30 range. It really keeps me like right at 25-ish. So, which is like perfect for me. But people respond differently, you know, to natural. They metabolize it differently. It stays in the system longer, or it, you know, gets out of the system very quickly for some people. It all really depends, man. But you need to run your labs on estradiol. Like if you feel like you're having ED or libido issues, you got to see where the estradiol is. Like, well, you should, I mean, if you want to be hyper crazy about it like I am, like do it the day post, 24 hours post dosing the anastrozole, and then also do it 3 days on the third day post dosing anastrozole, so that you can see when that rebound of estradiol is happening. That'll help you better dial in the dose. But I suggest you get your hands on that, which is compounded anastrozole tablets at 0.125 milligrams. You can have your doc prescribe that and get it through Empower. That's literally the best way to take anastrozole, unless you're on 250, 300 milligrams a test a week, in which case, you know, take the 1 milligram tablet, split it in half, and run that twice a week or more. Okay. Question about macunapurines. 500 milligrams to start. What should I feel? With macunapurines, yeah, an increase in drive to do stuff, like an increase in drive to just live your life. Dopamine is without dopamine, you're not going to want to live your life in like, you know, the most optimal way, or do stuff that you're commonly interested in, you know, like in various points, whether it was a nootropic experiment gone wrong or something, like I have induced like a state of dopamine deficiency or like a low dopamine. I was just not interested in much of anything. And then when I would get it corrected via P5P or Mucuna or something, I'd be like, oh, now I'm interested in life again. You know, everything's cool. I don't want to like, you know, sit around and do nothing all day, which is what essentially the low dopamine state is. And so that's what you should be noticing. You know, I wouldn't try to be like, oh, feel like a feel. Then that kind of makes it look like you're looking for like a recreational drug effect. You know, you're not really targeting that. You want to like understand how you're functioning in the capacity of like wanting to do stuff and be productive as an individual, and being happy about doing stuff. Aromacin, haven't taken aromacin. That stuff's very powerful. Estrogen knocks the effects of the dopamine receptors. Yeah, estrogen basically prevents dopamine from agonizing D2. It decouples D2 receptors, you know. And therefore makes dopamine a lot less potent at the receptor site. That's what estradiol does. Yeah, I don't know. You got to give me context with your question here. So I don't know if you should be taking aromacin or not. Context. Mark is saying, why Arimidex and not Aromasin? Just never dialed in Aromasin. That's why. And frankly, for me, these 0.125 milligram tablets are so perfect, right? And it's just they're perfect. Aromasin being a suicide inhibitor, like you got the Aromasin binds to the aromatase enzyme. It confuses the hell out of it, and then it just dies, right? And then it gets metabolized out of the system. But for those aromatase enzymes to come back takes a while. So if you get the dose wrong, which is very easy to do, especially if you're on a low dose of TRT, which I don't suggest you go high and use an AI, then you're going to be, feeling the wrath of lower than optimal estradiol, which feels terrible. It feels bad. It feels really bad. I mean, it's one of the worst feelings ever. So that's why I don't use Aromasin. Also, though, I've got, the 0.125 milligram anastrozole tablets compounded, and they work perfectly. And my dose is dialed in. And even if it isn't, like if I switch protocols, raise the test dose, lower the test dose, go on cream, bring HCG in, change the HCG dose, it's very simple for me to modify the anastrozole because it's in small increments to dial it right back in. That's why I don't use Aromasin. Not that I won't try in the future, because that's just my brain. And when is there a better way to do everything? But when it isn't broken, don't fix it. And that's kind of where I'm at. P5P to lower prolactin. Yeah. No, P5P is good as long as you don't have a pituitary tumor that secretes prolactin, because then P5P isn't going to lower it, or at any market level, especially if it's estrogen sensitive, which all prolactin nomas are. So yeah, P5P should be just fine, but you want to be taking upwards of 200 milligrams a day. Yeah, you're not going to run into neuropathy despite, what the clickbaity booster biology guy wants to frequently post about. It's such horseshit, man. No, P5P is exceedingly safe to take. Yeah, I'd be running 200 milligrams a day on that, and that should lower your prolactin levels. You want to stack it with vitamin E, that should also help. You want to stack it with mucuna purines, that will also help. As much hypothalamic dopamine as you can make without it being excessive, you're going to lower prolactin, and all those things will do that for you. Darren is saying, is there any way to reduce cortisol via blocking the enzymes that convert progesterone into cortisol? Not that I know of. Yeah, I mean, I don't know those enzymes that do that. You could try inhibiting ACTH. Agonizing dopamine receptors at some level inhibits cortisol, inhibits ACTH. So, that's one way to do it. I wouldn't want to do that. I don't think there's any way, you could high dose adaptogens and they will, I don't know if they'll actually lower cortisol, but they'll modulate your response to cortisol. So yeah, I don't have any other options for you. Make sure that lowering cortisol is actually what you want to do. And that you should be doing. Be 100% sure before you fuck with cortisol. Because you lower that stuff too low and your life is going to suck for a long time. 9-ABPC, avoid sun exposure. Yeah, that's largely a Reddit-born conspiracy theory. Never seen it apply in real life. Like many things that come out on Reddit. Nays, no, there aren't really any natural AIs. There is a chemical called, it's a combination of Chinese herbs called myomin. You can find it on Amazon. That does have one piece of scientific literature that shows that it's an AI, but not very potently. Selenium is a mild aromatase inhibitor. Proviron, which is a DHT analog, is actually a mild aromatase inhibitor. Yeah, it does bind. It was very hard to track this literature down. Very, very hard. Just I think it was a paper that went all the way back, but I had to finally track it down. And yes, Proviron, the DHT analog, does occupy aromatase enzymes. And so, that it also suppresses estrogen response at the genetic level post-estrogen receptor binding. So those are what you'd be looking at. You wouldn't really want to dose Proviron unless you have a libido issue or trying to lower SHBG on TRT. So, or unless you want to run a cycle of Proviron and, get harder and whatever, your muscles look a little harder and you'll be a little more dry and stuff. But, depending on your dose of TRT, like if you're above 150 milligrams and you're injecting anything other than every day, which is suboptimal for most people because you don't get enough peak of testosterone and androgenicity, then you're gonna you're going to not want to use like these mild AIs. You're going to want to use a real AI. Don't be afraid of it. Just make sure your dose is high enough to where the AI doesn't crash you, and get the 0.125 milligram of anastrozole compounded tablets. Zach, any benefits on while on TRT? I have ADHD, and I'm not sure if TRT can help with that as well. Yeah, it should. I mean, it's going to modify the dopaminergic system in a way which should be helpful to you. Having ADHD, I believe, is a problem with dopamine transporters working too efficiently, and thus, like, you're clearing too much dopamine, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe you should double check that. Maybe I'm confusing that with a different dopaminergic disorder. But yeah, the dopamine increase on TRT is caused by increased synthesis of dopamine via increased tyrosine hydroxylase expression. So no question, it's going to help you if you're in need of dopamine. If you have ADHD and you're taking ADHD drugs, which are Adderall, that's giving you more dopamine, TRT should help. Anything to stay away from on a dopamine recovery protocol? Well, no, not really. I mean, gambling. I don't know. I would say this, though, and I know you wanted an answer to your question. Unless you took a pharmaceutical D2 agonist for a long period of time in high doses, you don't have a dopamine receptor problem. You don't. It's nearly impossible to desensitize the dopamine receptors, at that level. There could be something to say for you getting psychologically used to like certain stimulus that's very powerful versus another stimulus. But I'm not sure that can be like translated into a lack of a dopaminergic response. No, I mean, if you want to recover dopamine, just take 9 MEBC. Take 9 MEBC, 40 milligrams, for 40 days, take a 2-week break, and then run it again. And that should resolve the issue. If it doesn't, dopamine was never your problem, my friend. Dopamine receptors, yeah. So this is a case where dopamine receptors can actually experience internalization and desensitization from heavy, see, D2 receptors, they do internalize or they reduce in quantity in response to very, very high agonism. And Adderall can do that. So that's one of the drugs that can cause, real dopamine receptor problems, depending on the dose and depending on the frequency and depending on the duration of use. You have to dose a lot of it for a long time, in other words. Best way to heal is, taper the Adderall and take 9 MEBC at the same time. That's really the best way. Solbutamine's cool. It's another B1 analog. I think the stuff is very potent B1 as just a standalone B vitamin helps you synthesize, release, and make more acetylcholine. It makes you also synthesize more dopamine. So very powerful in that regard. I think it has some pro-immunogenic effects too. It has pro-hydrochloric acid effects. Like it'll make you make more stomach acid, which is just mind-blowing, right? But I guess not, considering you need B vitamins and stuff for proper stomach acid production. So the B1 analogs are going to do all that stuff, make you make more excitatory neurotransmitters and help you to digest your food better. And sulbutamine is, another one of the analogs. Again, people tend to do better on one analog versus another. Like some people just do better on TTFD. It's another B1 analog. Some people do better on benfotiamine, another B1 analog. Some people are going to do better on sulbutamine. Endorphins, nootropics? Not really, no. I mean, there may be some nootropics that will raise endorphins at some level, but I'm not familiar with, because the mechanisms of action are very, very, very specific, and none of them, to my knowledge, are included in the literature as like a raise in some endorphin or something. Flo asked a question that goes, hey, I'm 20 years old and always had a lot of libido, smoked weed here and there, added lion's mane, but that didn't change anything regarding libido. Took kratom one time and libido is gone. Yeah, that'll happen. I mean, you got to look at your prolactin levels, because that could, one dose of kratom can, via it's like dopamine receptor, dopamine signaling blockade, can cause prolactin to go out of whack. And when that happens, then you have this weird response, right? The response is prolactin's high. It actually makes the hypothalamus release more dopamine, but that hypothalamic dopamine release like fires out of control because it's trying to keep up with this extra prolactin, and then the receptors desensitize to some level, and then the prolactin still stays raised because dopamine now can't lower the prolactin. Dopamine binds right to the pituitary D2 receptors and lowers prolactin, stops the anterior pituitary, I believe, from pumping out prolactin. Without dopamine, that prolactin is going to go out of control, and there's nothing you can do about it other than D2 agonism, whatever. But at the same time, even a little bit of that shuts down 5-alpha reductase, which is going to prevent you from turning your testosterone to DHT, which is the androgenic sexual, effect. Like the DHT binding at the penile tissues is, part of what gives you sensation and erection quality and all that stuff. But at the same time, you will stop or significantly lessen the amount of gonadotropins that you're making, via prolactin inhibiting gonadotropin release. Then you have no hardcore signal to the testicles from the pituitary to make testosterone. So, case in point, my friends, this is why I always, caution people against or frown against using kratom. There is better ways to address whatever it is you're doing. Don't use it recreationally. That is fucking stupid. Believe me, it is stupid. I have pulled people out of these holes and it took months more. Don't take kratom. Here's a guy, 1 dose, libido is gone. Yeah, look at all your labs. You look at your prolactin, see if it's still elevated. If it is, get it down. That should allow you to make your testosterone normally again, and that should resolve the issue in some time. If it doesn't, you probably want to get on TRT and HCG while managing estradiol, and that with the right protocol should resolve the issue. Is 5-HTP safe? Yes. Yes, it is. More platelets. Yeah, possibly. But if you can run labs to figure out if that's getting out of control, do so. But yeah, I've had stints of taking lots of 5-HTP. It was nothing but beneficial. It only gets weird in people with serotonergic problems or hardcore sexual dysfunction, because serotonin is, prolactin is under positive serotonergic control, which means, higher serotonin is going to mean higher prolactin, which is just killer. As we just saw with the kratom example, it just kills your sex drive, kills your erection quality, kills everything. So I'd say be careful in that regard. But otherwise, serotonin as a neurotransmitter is fine. You don't really want to take some neurotransmitters past where they kind of generally normally are or should be. And serotonin is one of those neurotransmitters that if it gets too high, it's problematic. Most neurotransmitters are like that, but serotonin is kind of more like that. You just don't want it to be, significantly high. Zach is saying, took Adderall 5 milligrams one day and didn't work. And then the next 10 milligrams for only 3 days. And then I got anhedonia. Interesting. And then what is your last point here? I'm not understanding what that last part is, but yeah, the anhedonia is the dopamine. It's like the dopamine withdrawal. You're not having adequate dopamine at the time you're having anhedonia. There's no question about that. Rodrigo, for this, you probably want to book me for a consultation because I would need to peer into everything that was happening around the time this started. I'd have to peer into your hormones. I'd have to peer into everything to figure out what's happening. So I can't help you on a YouTube comment with this. So go to livecortex.com on this page that you see here and just book an email consultation with me, or a call, depending on what your budget is, just book so we can get to the bottom of it. Because me giving you a recommendation here without knowing your exact situation is doing nobody any good. Best of luck though, my friend. Any other questions, guys? If you got any of them, let a brother know. You are welcome, bro. Marcus Aurelius. Love that. You're welcome, man. I'm glad to be here helping, man. I ain't got nothing to do right now, bro. And it might rain today. I don't know. I'm going to do probably 2-3 miles cardio later on today. Downtown Pittsburgh or North Shore, South Side. We'll see. Who knows? I'm excited about that. I play a lot of Modern Warfare too, even though the game sucks compared to 2019. And, recently they had this FPS bug, where it's like you were running 30 or 40 frames per second when you should be running. My PC is powerful enough. It should be running at least 150 frames per second. And they just rolled out a fix for the bug and it fixed it 30%. So guess I'm not going to game today. Because I can't be losing gunfights to console players because they have a higher fucking FPS than me. God. Does anything affect TRT sub-Q absorption? Yeah, the metabolism, your general metabolism, the movement of the blood in the area, that you're injecting. I mean, you don't have a whole lot of blood vessels in those areas. Doesn't mean sub-Q won't absorb, because it should. It's going to get you high blood levels of testosterone eventually if the dose is right and you're doing it consistently. But I'm not a fan of subcutaneous injections. I'm just not, I'm not. I know a lot of the guys that have been injecting intramuscular for a while are, because they have, scar tissue and all that stuff. And maybe I'll be there in 5 years, but right now you could pin a 5/8 inch high gauge needle in the ventral-glute and still get intramuscular and you don't feel a thing. And it's not like, harpooning your quad. It's very different, right? No, do I think that, deep intramuscular offers different pharmacokinetics? Yes, it most definitely does, right? More blood vessels, more, disbursement of the testosterone, better metabolism of it. But sub-Q is, fine. And the best thing you can do is exercise, to mobilize in the area that testosterone or whatever metabolic factors that force it to then be absorbed. But I will say that you doing subcutaneous injections is making you aromatize more. Even if it's fine and it's not a lot, you're aromatizing more via all the aromatase expression in fat tissues. So that's another thing to consider. And I've done sub-Q. Like, plenty of times, and for a longer period of time, it was fine. But, I had to modify the estradiol just a little bit. Absorption changes, kinetics change, and pharmacodynamics change. All right. I wouldn't take 9 MEBC with tyrosine or mucuna. Mucuna spelled MUCUNA, just because it's redundant and you wouldn't need it, and you may run the risk of impulsivity, like when dopamine gets too high. When dopamine gets too high, you'll do things that you wouldn't ordinarily do. It's almost like when you've drank too much and you say the wrong fucking thing, Dopamine will make you do like weird things. And I have induced states of like hyper dopaminergic function, and I wanted to do things that my otherwise normally dopamine function brain would be like, don't do that. Like, saner heads prevail. Darren can't help you there because I don't know what will cause your headache. You got to give me more context than that. No. So pairing oxyracetam with Alcar depends on the person if it's overkill or not. I don't think that it has to be overkill. I like it. I wrote about that in Smarter, Better, Faster. It's a book I wrote about nootropics. You can find it at livecortex.com. And I like that combo. I like racetam Alcar combination. Alcar will give you some more acetylcholine synthesis, which helps with oxyracetam forcing you to use more acetylcholine. So actually it stacks very well together. But mostly it's about fat transport to the cells for energy, for ATP. That's what Alcar is really doing. That's like predominantly powerful. So that is what I would say about that. All right, guys, I'm going to end the stream. The new Cortex stack is launching in either 15 days or like 20 days. So look forward to it. It is going to be insane. I don't have the label for you in front of me. So, this is if I can get the page to load correctly, this is the old, label for the Cortex stack. But yeah, I mean, the stack is very powerful and going to be awesome. It's a focus and flow stack, right? So you have stimulant and balancer in the new Cortex stack. All right. It's also, instead of being 30 capsules per bottle, it's going to be 60 capsules per bottle. So no, a true 2 capsule per serving, 30-day supply of the Cortex stack. That's launching very, very soon. We're just waiting for it to be finished up at the lab, guys. Waiting for it to be, done and produced. In the meantime, Torque stack in stock. Go get some. Stuff is exceptional. Okay. Energy, that is very noticeable. Like if I run out of the stuff, I start getting like bent out of shape. You need to have Torque at your desk. Have it next to you. It's a stack that I built for everyday usage. So if you're wanting a nootropic stack that is no frills, no bullshit, but will work, just buy Torque, livecortex.com. All right, guys, great questions. We'll do another live stream either this week or next weekend, so look forward to that. I got a lot of cool content coming up regarding P5P, so we're going to talk about that and its dopamine effects. I got a video on cordyceps coming and dopamine, so look forward to that. A lot of cool content coming. All right, guys. Great questions. Thanks for being here. Hope you guys have a great rest of your weekend. Let's hit the week with energy. like trying to be as positive as possible. Dude, optimize every one of your hormones, your neurotransmitters as much as possible, because that's the difference between, hating life and feeling suboptimal and, being a god. All right, guys, hope that makes sense. That's what everything is about on this channel, right? Make no mistake, it's about helping people perform great, because I've been doing it for years and I